then likely would have returned uh, the items. At the very least, told somebody where to find them. Possibly those who had cared for it over the years were told to, maybe even by God, to remove those items from the ark. We know in 1 Samuel 4:13 that Eli the Levite priest trembled for the safety of the ark when it was taken to war against the Philistines. Possibly he removed the items fearing that they would be lost if the ark was captured. If he did this in secret, it would explain the surprise when in Solomon's time the items were missing. Eli died when he fell off his chair and broke his neck after learning of the death of his sons and the capture of the ark, thus preventing the items returning to the ark. Also, in later times, when Israel was ruled by unfaithful kings, the priests removed the ark from Solomon's temple. In 2 Chronicles 35:3, King Josiah asked the Levites to return the ark to the temple. Josiah was the last godly king they had before the destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. He did all he could to restore the worship of Yahweh and to put down the foreign gods that the children of Israel had been worshiping. Unfortunately, after his death, the new king would go back to the foreign. After his death, new kings would go back to the foreign gods, thereby guaranteeing the destruction of the temple and the Babylonian captivity of the Israelites for 70 years. Revelation 11:19 talks of the ark in the temple in heaven. The ark was made on earth and was an earthly representation of the one in heaven, just like Jerusalem is a representation of God's holy city in heaven. And maybe the missing artifacts may have been taken by God and put in the ark in heaven. These theories of what happened to the manna and Aaron's rod in the book of the law is just speculation on my part. We can't be sure as to what happened to these items, since there is no reliable record. What we do know is that when the temple was overrun by the Babylonians, there is no record of them taking the ark, and there should have been if it was taken. The prophet Jeremiah, who prophesied the fall of Israel to the Babylonians, wrote in Jeremiah 3:16 that when they were multiplying and increased and back in the land, that the ark would be no more remembered and done no more. He is referring to the loss of the ark, and that even when they would return, that they would no longer have use of the ark in the second temple built after the Babylonian captivity. This ends the major biblical references to the ark and its history in the Bible. There is a reference to what happened to the ark in the second book of Maccabees, chapter 2, verses 4 through 10. They state that Jeremiah, being warned of God, took the ark of the tabernacle and the altar of incense, and buried them buried them in a cave on Mount Nebo, and that it would remain unknown until the time that God would gather his people together again and receive them unto mercy. The book of Maccabees, or the books of Maccabees, were written after uh, the Jews successfully defeated the Greeks and reestablished their independence for a short period of time after the Second Temple was built. There came a time that the Israelis yet again had fallen into sin against God, and they were defeated by the Greeks, more specifically by Alexander the Great, as prophesied by the book of Daniel. The Greeks would later set up an idol of Jupiter in the temple. This caused a revolt, which eventually led to the Maccabees winning and setting up an Israeli kingdom that would later be conquered by the Romans. The book of Maccabees is not considered canon by all Christians, and these books are not in most Bibles today, but they do give us a good historical snapshot for the period of time, and the account of what happened to the ark may possibly have some validity. One aspect of the ark's appearance that I think needs to be addressed is the cherubim that sit on the mercy seat. Modern Christians would think that a cherubim would look like a man with wings, or a little naked baby with wings. This is not what cherubim look like, especially the babies with wings. To the ancients, a cherubim looked something like a sphinx, having up to four faces, that of a lion, an ox, an eagle, and a man. And they have four wings. They have the stature of and hands of a man and the feet of a calf. It could be surprising to some to think that what seems to be a paganistic image would be on the Ark of the Covenant, but the ancients were just copying the likeness of real angelic beings. Remember, the Garden of Eden was guarded by cherubim with a flaming sword to keep man away from the tree of life. These images would be emulated in later times. This is an important to note that if any ark is found, that no matter what the cherubim look like, we should not we should not jump to any conclusions based on our uh, preconceived notions, but judge the artifact based on the facts of its finding to determine if it is the real thing. In the end, they may have made the cherubim to look like men with wings. Over the years, there have been many theories as to what happened to the ark and where it is. Today, one prevalent theory is from the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which actually claims to have the ark and a treasury near the Church of Our Lady, Mary of Zion. The origin of this story dates anywhere from 642 BC to 1270 AD, written in the Kebro-Nagast, Ethiopia. This is Ethiopia's greatest national document, and the idea that the Ethiopian royal line was descended from Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, comes from this. It also states that the ark was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik after visiting Solomon. After visiting Solomon, Solomon supposedly made a copy for the temple and gave him the real ark. This, of course, is a legend, and if the events happen as told, it would be more likely that Menelik would have gotten a copy and not the original. But the church has an artifact, copy or not, which is guarded, and no one is allowed to see it, except for the caretaker, who never leaves the building it's in. They have claimed that they would only unveil it at the proper time. That's why recently there was a lot of excitement when the patriarch of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church said soon the world would be able to admire the ark, and this was reported on June 25th, 2009. It was suggested that a museum was being built in Axiom, Ethiopia, where it would be displayed, but the next day he announced that he would not unveil the ark, but that he would not unveil the ark, but that he could attest to its reality. The Lemba people of South Africa and Zimbabwe believe that they are of Jewish descent and that they claim that their ancestors carried the ark to South Africa. They called it the Ngoma Lagunva, translated the voice of God. They say that their people put it in a cave in the Dumge Mountains. Tudor Parfit wrote in his book, The Lost Ark of the Covenant, about his research and theories into the possible validity of this story. He suggests that the ark was taken to Arabia following the second book of Maccabees, and that it's found its way to Yemen, to the town of Sela, where the ancestors of the Lemba, people, the the Buba clan, migrated with it to Africa, and according to the oral traditions, the ark self-destructed when it arrived in Africa. The Lemba priest made a copy from a piece of the core, and this replica was found in a cave by a Swedish-German missionary, Harold von Sickard, in the 1940s. The artifact was eventually taken to the Museum of Human Science in Harare. Tudor Parfit had the artifact carbon dated, and the results found the wood to date to 1350 AD, the approximate end of the Great Zimbabwe civilization. The strongest proof that these oral traditions might have some truth is the fact that the Buba clan, who supposedly brought the ark to southern Africa, have the genetic marker of the Levite priests. There is no doubt that there are African people of Jewish descent throughout Africa, some of which Israel has been returning to the Promised Land. These people's traditions may hold